Hello, I'm Jim, and welcome to Rallying in America, the Recce Podcast. This podcast is an exploration of a rich history, the stories and memories of those who made and make Rallying in America so great. Enjoy the show. Thanks for being on the show. Really appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
And I just wanted to, let's just start off with you're getting ready for Snowdrift this week.
Yeah, that's right, Jim. And as I start off, I'll just tell you that I'm talking to you right now from inside my rally car, actually doing some final prep out here today. And I guess I'm either just that crazy or that excited about Snowdrift. So, we're looking forward to it. It'll be this coming Friday and Saturday, of course, and looks like very snowy conditions. So yeah, it'll be good. That's what Snowdrift is all about.
Great. Have you run Snowdrift before?
Yeah, so this will be our second time. The last time we were there was in 2023. And then, of course, I've spectated in the past, and it was actually Snowdrift 2015, I think, that I attended. It was my first stage rally, actually being there to spectate. And it was the event that made me go, wow, I want to do this. So definitely a special event and kind of one of our local favorites here in Michigan. So, we're really excited, and it's one of the highlights of the year for us, most definitely.
All right. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about the car that you're in, that you're working on today?
Sure, yeah. So we have a 2004 Subaru Impreza, and I guess I'll tell a little bit of the story about how I got into rallying in a minute. But the car that my dad and I have been competing in stage rally with for about 3 years now has always been a rally car. It was rallied by a guy out of the Chicago area named Eric Bielobreski for a number of years, and then passed on to a guy named Dan Colburn in the St. Louis area. The Kansas City area. And we bought the car from Dan Colburn in 2022. And Dan, he was a great guy, very well known for maintaining a car to the most meticulous details. So, we continue to benefit from him. It's been a great car to learn on. And, we've run Snowdrift a couple of times now. We did Summer Snowdrift back when that event was being held. And then we competed at LSPR last year. NASA has an event, or a couple of events in the UP. So we've been up there. And then we've done the Empire Hill Climb here in northern Michigan as well. So great car. It's the naturally aspirated all-wheel drive class. And, as we say, we try not to embarrass the car when we're out there on stages.
Nice. So your dad, your co-driver. Has it always been you the driver and your dad the co-driver?
Yeah, so I guess, if it's all right with you, I can go back a little bit into how I got into rallying and how my dad and I got to rally together, because that was not the original plan. It's just worked out that way. But, I've always been around motorsports, I guess, going all the way back to the beginning. My family has been involved in auto racing for generations. My great-grandfather started going to the Indy 500, I think in 1926, and was a lifelong fan. My grandfather, Jack Layton, was involved in motorsports. He built sprint cars, drag cars, was involved all across the Midwest, and then eventually got into restoring vintage Indy cars. So when I was a kid, I remember him having Indy Roadsters, and that was really cool to be around, the Offenhauser engines. He also restored a car that's now in the Indy 500 museum, down at the Speedway in Indianapolis. So I've always kind of been around motorsports, also vintage motorsports, which has worked out kind of to influence my passion for history. But, I also realized pretty early on that I was not much of a mechanic. So, I didn't really get involved as a competitor until later on. I was in my, early 20s. And I don't think I really had any consciousness of rallying at all. Having been very familiar with NASCAR, IndyCar, and stuff like that.
Okay.
I don't think it was actually until 2009. I can remember, I'm in the Air National Guard here in Michigan, and I was deployed to Iraq in 2008 and 2009. And over there, they had Al Jazeera TV, and Al Jazeera is based out of Qatar. The Dakar Rally was really big, very popular.
Oh, right, yeah.
Right, so Nasser Al-Attiyah is one of the kind of perennial competitors, and he's Qatari, so there was a lot of coverage on him. And, it's auto racing, it's motorsports, so I remember being deployed and watching the Dakar Rally in 2009. Nice. Well, that was back at the time when Robbie Gordon was really one of the only American competitors at Dakar. And, of course, I was familiar with him from NASCAR, IndyCar, and he's over there, mixing it up. I think he finished third that year and was very competitive. But there was one interview with Robbie Gordon that year that I remember that made a big impression on me, where he said, to put it in perspective, the Dakar Rally was like running the Daytona 500 every day for 2 weeks.
Wow.
And that really made a big impression on me. So, so rallying kind of got in my head. A little bit later on, I'm kind of in my early mid-20s. I've got a little bit of money to spend on my own. And I decided to dip my toe into auto racing finally as a competitor, and just see what it was like. So I messed around a little bit, and I did the Skip Barber program with the Formula cars for a little bit. Did some autocrosses, got familiar, with the Detroit Region Sports Car Club of America, and they've got a great rallycross program and a TSD rally program. So I did a rallycross, and then I did a TSD rally. And I think, for me, really, the TSD rally was amazing because it was the seat time. Unlike an autocross or a rallycross where you do a few laps, and it's timed and it's fun. But a TSD rally, I was out there for like 8, 10, 12 hours. And now, events like Press On Regardless are even longer than that.
Right.
So, that was a great experience. So I really got into the TSD rallies and rallycross also, and just started learning more about it. So I can tell you, though, how unprepared I was for my first rally, my first TSD rally.
Okay.
I had a Dodge Challenger at the time, which is about the worst car you could possibly, run a rally with. And I started out with my buddy from work, Tristan Evans. So we're out there, first time, and we get into the rally, and I thought I was doing great because there were a whole bunch of cars that were going really slow, and I passed about 9 of them, in the first section of the rally. So it happened that there was a guy by the name of Doug Shepard who was competing, and Doug Shepard is really a legend. He's a multi-time national champion in stage rally, just an exceptional resume in the sport. And actually, I think it was the first break in the rally. Doug kind of took me aside and asked me, how you think you're doing? And I was like, oh, doing okay. And then he proceeded to explain to me that there's such a thing as starting on your own minute, and running on time in a rally. So then, oh, okay, we're not doing so well.
Right.
But that was my first lesson in rally. And then, kind of a bookend on that story. Years later, getting ready to run our first stage rally at Summer Snowdrift, and there was a novice orientation the night before. Well, Doug Shepard was there. He came over and sat right by me during the novice orientation, I think, just to see if I had any questions, but anyway, that's kind of how I got started in rallying. 2014. So I did my first TSD in 13. 2014, I went to Press On Regardless.
Okay.
Again, totally unprepared, not only for the rally, but also the impact, that being at Press On Regardless for the first time was going to have on me. And, that just kind of launched a passion and really a journey of discovery into the history of Press On Regardless and rallying, which we can probably talk about later. But Press On Regardless, became my favorite event. Ran it for a number of years with starting out with my buddy Tristan Evans. Also competed with another good friend, Cody Bayer, who's also from up here in northern Michigan. And then 2019, I was hoping to run Press On Regardless, but my car wasn't ready. The transmission was shot. my Tristan, who was my normal co-driver, was unavailable. So, I didn't know how I was going to make it to the event, but I knew that it was called Press On Regardless.
Right.
And I was going to figure out a way to press on regardless and get there, no matter what it took. So right up until the morning of the event, I'm making phone calls. I'm trying to figure it out. And finally, my last ditch hope was to call my dad. And I just said, hey, would you be willing to do this crazy thing with me? And he said, yeah, we can do that. So we rented a 4x4 Jeep Cherokee,
Nice.
from the local auto rental. And anyway, we made it to the start of the event with minutes to spare, literally. You cannot make this up. And that year, Press On Regardless was a 2-day event. It was probably about 500 miles.
Okay.
Anyway, we started out, we were just happy to be there. Ended up winning the stock class at the end of the weekend. So after that, my dad was hooked. We continued to do the TSD rallies together. We had a couple more good finishes, and then a few years later, we had the opportunity to get the stage rally car, which was just kind of a natural progression for us. So oh, by the way, now my dad is the chairman for the Press On Regardless rally.
Right, that's what I was going to ask.
With Bruce Fisher, who's the longtime rally master for the event. So
that's
kind of cool. And we're just having a great time. It's just gone from there, and just thankful for the opportunity to compete, and then also to do it together. It's pretty special doing it with my dad. He competed many years ago, in the 70s and 80s in motocross and go-karts. So he gets the competitive side, and it's just a great thing to do together. So, So that's kind of our story in a nutshell, but happy to go in any other direction you want to, because I could talk about this stuff all day long.
That's great. And your dad is your co-driver. I think we mentioned that early on, but he's helping you out.
That's right, yeah. Joe Layton.
Yeah, fantastic. That's really nice to hear, father and son doing it together. And you've got such a rich history with your family and motorsports, which is fantastic. So speaking of Press On Regardless, you've written a book about it, correct?
Yeah, that's right. As I mentioned earlier, running Press On Regardless for the first time was a pretty awesome experience. We did not finish the rally the first time, but just being up there for the event, people are telling stories. I noticed that there were several guys who had been a part of the event for decades. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're talking all the way back. I got a shout out to Tom Woodside, who I think has been a part of every Press On Regardless, either as a competitor or volunteer in some fashion since 1965.
Wow.
Bruce Fisher, again, he's been the longtime rally master. Also guys like David Stone, they've just been around Press On Regardless for a very, very long time. So that's what kind of sparked this interest for me. It's like, what is it about this event that makes it so special? So I dug into the history a little bit and talked to some of these guys, who have been a part of it for so many years. Right. And it was pretty fascinating to come to the understanding that really Press On Regardless is the cornerstone for everything that we really do in the United States when it comes to rally. So it just evolved into this project that ultimately became the book. And so I hope that the book is something where we can share this history that I've been fortunate enough to capture and hear firsthand.
Yes.
And again, just kind of celebrate the amazing heritage that we have here.
Right.
People ask me a lot of times, what's the best POR story that you know? Mm-hmm. And I got to say that the best story about Press On Regardless, in my opinion, is the fact that it's still there. That we still have it. It's ongoing since 1949. It's the longest continually held, rally motorsports event in the United States. So pretty amazing. And again, thanks to the foresight of guys like Bruce Fisher, and then before him, Scott Harvey and Gene Henderson, who were really driving catalysts behind the event in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. We still have this awesome event. Right. And I got to say also, Press On Regardless is a TSD rally now, but it's an awesome event to get involved in if you're looking to kind of dip your toe into rallying, because you can compete um, with very low overhead. And, again, it's a TSD rally, so we got to be very clear that it's not a race.
Mm-hmm.
It's precision driving and it's timed. But, you can go out and you can be on roads in northern Michigan that have World Rally Championship heritage from when POR was in 1970, or was a WRC event in the 1970s. Okay. So it's an awesome experience. It's an awesome way to dip your toe into rallying. And then you can start to develop the driver co-driver dynamic. You can get familiar with route instructions, which are very similar to stage rallying route instructions. And as a driver, I can tell you that even the TSD aspect, is still a worthy challenge.
Right.
There was an app that came out a few years ago that has revolutionized TSD rallying in many ways. So the number of checkpoints are unlimited. You don't know where the checkpoints are. And particularly with this app, the intensity of TSD rallying has just been elevated. And that's where, again, you get done doing an event like this for 12 hours or so. You may not be going 80 or 100 miles an hour through the woods, but you still, definitely feel like you've been tested.
Right.
So I highly recommend POR to anybody that is interested in rallying, especially if you're interested in kind of the heritage. Come out and give it a try, because I think it's a great event and kind of a hidden gem of motorsports.
Right. So TSD rally and rallycross seem to be great gateways into stage rallying.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I think my dad and I are trying to do. We're here to have fun, first of all,
right.
Have a great experience together, but we also really enjoy kind of that connectivity between stage rallying and TSD rallying, helping to get other people excited about the sport, and then also celebrating the heritage. But I would say that TSD rallying is one of the best ways to get into stage rallying if you want to do it. In addition to volunteering at a stage rally, you can show up with again, high ground clearance vehicle,
right,
and pad of paper, really, and you can compete in the stock class and have a great time and just learn about it.
Very nice.
Rallycross is the same thing. I had a great experience doing rallycross for a number of years, and that's a really good way to develop car control and just some of the same skills, kind of on a smaller scale, that are directly applicable to stage rally.
Right.
So those are both two great programs, and aside from being excellent inroads into stage rally, they're just fun.
Right. Excellent. So why don't you tell us a little bit about more of what you write and publish, aside from that history of the Press On Regardless?
Yeah, so I kind of touched on it already, but I think I've always loved history, and particularly motorsports history is something I've always been drawn to. I think a lot of that goes back to again, my grandfather and the exposure that I had to vintage Indy cars when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
But I found the writing and research about motorsports history to be a way that I could participate. Really, again, not being a natural born mechanic, it was a way to participate. And then also, loving history. I can't be a rally driver, in the 50s or 60s, or I can't drive an Indy car, at the Indy 500 in 1955. But by studying and researching what that experience would have been like, it's almost a way to live vicariously. So, I've had a great time doing these books. In addition to the Press On Regardless book, I had the opportunity to do a biography on a guy named Ray Crawford, who is really an interesting character from the motorsports landscape in the 1950s. He was a World War II fighter ace, as well as one of the first jet test pilots.
Oh, wow.
And then, he was very skilled, and adept as an aviator. But then his career ended, and, there was some stuff that happened, and his flying, was unable to continue. So he got into motorsports, and it was just a direct transfer of everything that he loved about flying. and he participated in everything from Indy cars to hydroplanes to stock cars. And then in Mexico, he actually won the stock class of the Carrera Panamericana, or the Mexican road race, in 1954. And the Mexican road race was very similar to a rally. We're talking about a 2,000-mile border-to-border dash, basically, on the Pan American Highway. So he had a co-driver, and it was timed by the minute, very, very similar to a modern-day rally. And that was really where Ray excelled. So had a chance to work with his family on that book. That was a great experience. I did another book a few years later on a guy named Danny McKeever, who's a driving instructor from out in California. And then I've got two projects that are ongoing, one of which is about the kind of the birth of the Scarab sports car racing team, which eventually transitioned into constructing the first American Formula One car in the 1950s and early 60s. So that's a really interesting project. And then I've got another one also on General Curtis LeMay, who was one of the famous, Air Force commanders from World War II and the Cold War, who was also a big racing fan, and everything that Curtis LeMay and then his command, the Strategic Air Command, did to support American motorsports in the 1950s. Everything to include holding races on Strategic Air Command bases.
Oh, okay.
All the way up to actually developing an experimental Indy car with a turbine engine that was kind of a forerunner to the STP turbine cars that were at Indianapolis in the late 60s.
Excellent.
So, I really enjoy putting the stories together. It's like a puzzle almost. And I've got to say that the hardest thing about these projects for me is knowing when to stop, because it's the process that I enjoy so much. Stopping it or completing the project means that the fun of searching for these stories is over. So that's kind of the challenge for me. But I love all this stuff, and I got to say, there might be a book on the Snowdrift Rally someday. Also, there's a lot of great history.
Excellent. Yeah.
Yep.
And to give you a little bit of a plug, your company is called Revolution Press, and folks can visit revolutionpressllc.com, correct? Is that the right?
That's right. Yep. Or you can come find me at the Park Expose at Snowdrift.
Okay, that's excellent. That sounds great. Yeah, it's amazing. You talk about how much fun it is to do the research on your subject matter, and yeah, to me that's where you just learn some incredible histories about certain individuals and events, and
yeah. So, to share a couple more stories, that I feel very fortunate to have heard firsthand. I had a chance to visit Scott Harvey Sr. A few years ago. And of course, Scott Harvey Sr., he's one of the pioneers of American rallying. In fact, John Buffum, I think, referred to Scott Harvey and Gene Henderson as the Lewis and Clark of American rallying. So Scott passed away a few years ago, but I had a chance to visit him in 2016. And, he was living out in California at the time. And we had an opportunity to spend a couple of hours just looking at pictures. He was quite elderly at the time, but as we looked at the photos, the memories would come back and the stories would start to come forth, which was really cool. But, it was interesting because I was talking to him about kind of the beginning of Press On Regardless. And for a real quick overview kind of how Press On Regardless developed. Again, going back to 1949, it actually began in its true origin with a group of guys from the Detroit region SCCA who went to Watkins Glen to watch the Watkins Glen Grand Prix in 1948. Then they came back to Detroit and they said, wow, that was really an awesome event. We've got the Detroit chapter of the SCCA. Wouldn't it be great if we had kind of a signature marquee event, that would be our identity, basically, as the Detroit Region Club. So, Watkins Glen had the road race, so they said, let's do something different. and they started talking about a road rally. Well, one of the members at the time of the Detroit Region SCCA was a gentleman named Charlie Davison, who was an Englishman. And, he suggested that maybe they kind of give this a theme around this phrase, press on regardless. And, the story goes that press on regardless was something that Royal Air Force aircrew members used to say during World War II. And it was kind of a loose adaptation of Winston Churchill's famous speech where he said, never, never, never give up. And they thought that it was appropriate because, a lot of the cars at the time were MGs and Triumphs and British sports cars. So, again, 1949 was the first press on regardless. It was pretty successful. They drew a lot of entries from around the Midwest. And at the time, there was a lot of crossover with sports car drivers and racers. But it was kind of a color tour. I think it was in October, and they went from Dearborn to Battle Creek up to Flint. So it wasn't the really hardcore, northern Michigan logging trails that I think of now. And that's kind of how press on regardless remained for about the next 10 years. It wasn't until the late 50s that Scott Harvey and Gene Henderson became involved, and they were really the guys that ramped it up into a true endurance event. They were the Rally Masters in 1961, and that year they decided to make Press On Regardless a 24-hour TSD rally.
Oh wow! Okay.
So round the clock, and that was kind of a pivotal moment in making Press On Regardless. Something that was going to be a national level challenge. Well, a few years later. And this is where I go back to my story about Scott Harvey. Harvey and Henderson decided that they were going to go to the Monte Carlo rally, and they were going to try out rallying in Europe. So they had a Plymouth Valiant, and they went up against Europe's best. So when I was talking to Scott Harvey, he had a lot of pictures from this 1964 Monte Carlo rally. It was a huge adventure, and Scott was an engineer at Chrysler, so he kind of took the whole month off. Gene Henderson was a police officer from Dearborn, so they went over there together. And I said to Scott, I said, well, what was that like, to be over there? You're a couple of guys from Michigan, and here you are, the biggest rally in Europe. And he's kind of paused, and he was like, it was a bunch of hoopla. Yeah. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, the roads were all paved. So that was something that they took back here to Michigan with them. Having had this experience, in Europe, they were like, hey, we could put on a much more challenging event here in Michigan because we have all these gnarly logging trails and roads, that nobody wants to go on. And, we could really make an event that's world class. So that was 1964. That kind of set them on this journey that led to Press On Regardless, increasing in difficulty. 1968, there was the first closed special stage in the United States. It was held on Connors Flat, which is a road kind of outside Grayling, Michigan. And that was the first special stage. 1969, there were 4 special stages in the rally. And then 1970, they came in with the FIA sanction, which made it an international event. 1972, it was part of the International Manufacturers Championship. That was the year.
Oh wow! Okay.
Gene Henderson famously won in the Jeep Wagoneer, shocked all the European teams that this big lumbering vehicle could actually rally, let alone win. But he had 4-wheel drive, and then from there, 73 and 74, it was a World Rally Championship event. 74, there were some issues. Famously, as you may have heard, it was the Lancia Stratos that, according to who you ask, they kind of maybe did a burnout or, a little too aggressive through the streets of Felch, Michigan, up the peninsula. And it happened to be Halloween night, so there's trick-or-treaters out there. And anyway, they invoked the ire of the Dickinson County Sheriff, who ended up shutting down the rally. And that was the end of Press On Regardless as a World Rally Championship event, but then it continued as an SEC Pro Rally for many years. So
with Press On, it was kind of a, the epicenter, or these concentric rings kind of spread out from press on, it seems like, and it kind of grew from there across the country.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's pretty much unanimously, no matter who you ask that was involved in rallying at that time, it was like Press On Regardless was the big event in in the United States.
Right.
Certainly, it wasn't the only event, but that was the event where everybody had it circled on their calendar. It was the event that that brought the foreign teams in, the international teams, and it was the first international rally held in the United States. So, of course, they've been back since then to other events, but 1973 POR was the first WRC round in the United States. So yeah, a lot of what we have today, as far as professional rallying in the United States goes back to kind of that heritage with Press On Regardless. And then, to kind of trace the story to where it's at today with POR, it basically split off in 1994 into the Lake Superior Performance Rally. So we still have a lot of that heritage. Last year, LSPR ran out of Marquette, which is the same location that it started in 1974, 50 years ago, when it was WRC round. And, so it's a lot of the same roads, same conditions that POR was famous for. The Press On Regardless name stayed with the Detroit region SCCA, and that's where they continued it as a TSD rally from 1994 on. And Gene Henderson remained the rally master for several years when it was a TSD rally. And then Bruce Fisher took it over in 2001 and, has really done a great job of keeping the event going, keeping it challenging, but also something that's accessible for novices and people that are just interested in come checking out what rally is all about.
Nice. Very nice. So after Snowdrift, what are your plans for the rest of the year as far as competing?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, because I've got a little bit of a logistical challenge, because I actually work in West Africa right now.
Oh, wow.
I'm in the Michigan Air National Guard, and we have a training partnership with the nation of Liberia and also Sierra Leone. So these are two countries in West Africa, and we send teams over there to cooperate with their military and help develop professionalism and security partnerships. So there's always somebody from the Michigan National Guard at the U.S. Embassy over in Liberia, and me right now. So that's where I've been able to continue to compete, just coming back on leave, and as it's worked out. So, I don't know. I'd like to run Press On Regardless as the TSD rally later this year.
Right.
I don't really know, though. I'm thankful to be here at Snowdrift, and we're going to have a great time, and that'll be excellent. But we're just kind of taking the opportunities as one-offs as they come right now.
Right.
I can tell you long term, I always want to compete, in some fashion, but I do want to get more into actually putting on the events, kind of the event organization aspect.
Excellent.
And again, kind of just helping people get excited about the event or about the sport in general.
Right.
So I've got a couple ideas for TSD rallies that I want to do, and I'll definitely remain involved for as long as I can going forward.
Right. I'm definitely going to have to try to sign up for a TSD rally now, for sure. Give it a go. I think it'd be a lot of fun. Either get my wife to go with me or my son. I think that'd be great. I'll have to start looking at the schedules. So.
Yep. Well, I can throw in a plug for POR this year. Yep. It's always the weekend after Labor Day in September. And I can't get too much away, but I think it's going to start out of Gaylord, Michigan this year.
Okay.
And again, highly recommended. As long as you've got kind of a high ground clearance vehicle that you don't mind getting dirty, you should be able to come and compete at least in the stock class and have a great time.
All right, excellent. Well, first off, thank you for your service, and thank you for being on the podcast. we could probably talk for hours, and love to have you back at some point when you're back and maybe working the TSD rally or another event. We'd love to chat with you again. So.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure, Jim. And I just want to say a couple things. I guess as we wrap up here, first of all, thank you for what you're doing to tell the stories of what makes rallying great in the United States. I think we're coming at this kind of from similar perspectives, where it's about the stories, it's about the people,
right?
It's about the experiences and the adventure that make rallying so compelling. And I really appreciate everything you're doing. I also wanted to say that one thing I've learned in in doing this, both kind of at the TSD rallycross level and now at stage rallying, is you can't do anything by yourself. So I definitely wanted to say thanks to a number of guys that have helped me out.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned Cody Bayer earlier, who helps maintain our stage rally car. He's a great, gifted mechanic. Also want to say thank you to Tristan Cavizzo, who's another good friend from Rallycross, always crews for us. And then we've also been really blessed to work with a couple of great young guys. Craig Dumea crewed for us a couple of years at Snowdrift, and he's now a co-driver, actually.
Nice.
And then we've got, another guy, Liam Lefebvre, who's worked with us, helped us actually swap the engine out before Snowdrift. So he's a great up-and-coming rally mechanic also. And, I think all these guys probably feel more sorry for the car. They want to take care of the car after I put it through its beatings. Yep. But, I really appreciate it again. And, of course, my wife, who supports, and allows me to go out and do this stuff in the woods. So
awesome.
Just wanted to give kudos there.
Excellent. If you'd like to be on the podcast, you can email me, jim@jimboothdesigns.com, or message me through Facebook at Rallying in America, the Recce Podcast, or Instagram, rallying_in_America. Special thanks to our sponsor for this episode, Brady Instruments, pro-grade, handmade, professional fuel hydrometers. Visit bradyinstruments.com for all of your fuel testing needs. And remember, don't be a fool. Check your fuel. Thanks to Toontank and the artist Nuclear Wave and their song In Drive for the podcast theme music.